going to argue why you should take a running back in the first round, and then preview the NFC and the AFC Norths. Let's go.
You're listening to the Running Up the Score podcast. Now here's your host, Jerry Napoleonello.
All right, here we go. It is Running Up the Score. I'm Jerry Napoleonello. Let's get right into it. We got the goods today. We got another round of previews. We're going with the AFC North, the NFC North. Let's get right into it. But first, let's go around the league and check out what's going on. Justin Herbert got a big deal. He is the highest paid player right now. That is until Joe Burrow gets his bag. So Herbert will hold that title for a little bit longer, and then we'll see Burrow there. Speaking of Burrow, Burrow gets hurt in training camp. Hurts his calf, is going to be out multiple weeks. And my question is, all right, now you watched the injury, didn't look bad. It really didn't. It was scary that it was a non-contact injury. Anytime you see a non-contact injury with any player, you're worried, especially the way he pulled up. You're thinking hamstring, Achilles, ACL, MCL, whatever it is. It ends up being a calf injury. But when you watch it, he had a sleeve on that calf. So that's odd to me. Whether it was bothering him prior to that and maybe he shouldn't have been out there, or at least maybe doing stuff on the side. Whatever it is, Burrow's out. Another training camp that he'll be missing a lot of time from. So that is definitely something to watch if you're a Cincinnati fan or if you're just, checking out Cincinnati. Jalen Ramsey gets hurt. Now, his is more of a bigger injury because he won't be back probably until December. So that's a big hit for Miami. Miami was coming into this season now with Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard looking like they're a top 2, maybe top 3, maybe even number 1 secondary, cornerback tandem. He's down now until about December-ish. That's what they're hoping for. So that's something to keep an eye on in Miami. And another thing that I really wanted to talk about was, there's a lot of talks of these running backs, and their contracts and this and that, whatever it is. You're seeing a lot of it, whether it be Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler came out and said stuff. Saquon Barkley having his issues with the Giants before signing his contract. The running back position is tough. It really is tough because you get to a certain point where the beating that they've taken is now coming back to bite them. Whether it be a team that used them as a workhorse, as in like the Cowboys with Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, the guy was a great running back. I mean, he still is. He's just lost his step a little bit. But he was always that type of running back, and you love to see it. But he was one of those types of running backs that looked for contact. And that's great. I mean, as a fan, especially as a fan of the Cowboys, that's what you want to see. You want to see that running back look for contact. You want them to set the tone. And that's what Ezekiel Elliott did each and every week. But, coming up past his second contract, and, age was getting to him. The beating that he's taken for the last couple of years has come back to bite him. So the Cowboys had to cut their ties with him. But it's something that is to be looked at when you're looking at all these running backs. I mean, out of the last, so let's go, this is one of the biggest arguments that everybody brings up nowadays with the running back position. The last 14 Super Bowls, the leading rusher on those teams, okay? Let's start out. So 14. So this is 2009. The Saints, Pierre Thomas. Not great. Not bad, but not great. 2010, the Packers, James Starks. 2011, Giants, Ahmad Bradshaw. 2012, the Ravens with Ray Rice. He's probably the biggest name in terms of running back, I guess, on this list. 2013, the Seahawks had Percy Harvin, who was a wide receiver. The 2014 Patriots, LeGarrette Blount. 2015 Broncos, C.J. Anderson. 16 and 17 Patriots and Eagles, LeGarrette Blount again. 18 Patriots, Sony Michel. 19 Chiefs, Damian Williams. 20 Buccaneers, Leonard Fournette. 21 Rams, Cam Akers, and then 22 the Chiefs with Isaiah Pacheco. Not big. I mean, their salaries. Look at this: $460,000, $320, $1.5 million, $2 million, $2.5 million, $730,000, $585,000, $760,000, $900,000, $480,000, $1.05. Then you got $2 million, and then you got $890,000 and $870,000. Not big time contract running backs. And that's huge, especially when you're an owner of a team and you're a GM of a team and you're trying to put a team together. This is a position that you really don't have to go that high in contracts, because all you really have to do is just get somebody that is decent for a cheap price. Now, I'm also going to argue, because now, ever since, really, I think Ezekiel Elliott was the last one. Actually, no, we'll say Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs. So Josh Jacobs was the last first rounder other than Bijan Robinson, this year. Josh Jacobs was the last one to be drafted in the first round. So there has been 25 running backs that have been drafted in the first round in the last 23 years. This is since 2000. So when you look at it, Saquon, Ezekiel Elliott, Doug Martin, Najee Harris, LaDainian Tomlinson, Reggie Bush, Trent Richardson, Adrian Peterson, Chris Johnson, Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, Jamal Lewis, Joseph Adai, Willis McGahee, Todd Gurley, Travis Etienne, Javid Best, Marshawn Lynch, Kevin Jones, Josh Jacobs, Noshawn Moreno, Cadillac Williams, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Ronnie Brown, and now Bijan Robinson. These are all running backs that were taken in the first round. Now, when you look at the way contracts go in the NFL, if you're a first-round draft pick, you get a 4-year contract most likely, and a 5th-year option that goes to the team. So, when you really look at it, the years that you're going to get the best out of your running back, those first 5 years, I would say. That's... So, I'm going to argue, because, after Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley, it was looked at as, frowned upon to take a running back in the first round, or even in the top 10, whatever it was just frowned upon. You don't do it. There's no reason to do it. But I'm going to argue that you should take a running back in the first round. If that running back, like the way Bijan Robinson is, Bijan Robinson is looked at as one of the top players in this past draft. So I'm okay with Atlanta taking him in the first round. Top 10, that's a little crazy because you're going to get a little bit of a high contract. But if you take a running back of that nature in the first round, get the most that you can out of that running back in the first 5 years. And then when his contract comes up to the point where they want to start renegotiating, you move on. So you get 5 years out of that running back. So yeah, I'm going against the narrative here because I think it's a move. Like Atlanta, listen, you get the best out of Bijan Robinson. You work him to the bone these next couple of years. And then when it comes down to it, he needs a big contract, then you kind of move on. And I think that teams can start doing that. Because, to be honest with you, I think it's just smart. Because if they're taken in that second round and anywhere further, they don't get that fifth-year option for the team. So, that's something that because I never really thought of it that way until I saw what the Dallas Cowboys did with Trayvon Diggs. And they went out this offseason and they signed him to a big deal. Now, when you look at that, you start to see what kind of, how good of a move that was. Because you now have Trayvon Diggs, who was able to negotiate his contract this year. That was, that's the thing. You have to get past year 3 to be able to renegotiate your deal. So in terms of a second round pick, as Trayvon Diggs was, you get past that third round, that third year, you start negotiating and they can hold out for that last year, basically. Now, the same thing goes for Micah Parsons, but Micah Parsons can't negotiate his contract or renegotiate his contract or even try to talk about an extension until the end of this coming year. So the way the money works out and everything, it was just a smart move for the Cowboys to extend Trayvon Diggs the way that they did. So that just got me thinking in terms of how the contracts work when you're drafted. And I think taking a running back in the first round is a good move. You get that extra year. And, once you get a running back past 26, 27, they're starting to kind of trickle down. You obviously have running backs that, have flourished. I mean, there's some guys here that I'm looking at, but they're big names. And, you're looking at them in terms of, they get that sixth year and they blow up. But then after that, so Saquon is going into his sixth year. So he's got 5 years under his belt. He's only played a full season twice. And that was his first year and this past year. Those were his best years, both around 1,300 yards. Okay? Ezekiel Elliott. When you look at Ezekiel Elliott is in his 6th year. He is in his 7th year. Well, going into his 8th year. Okay? And he got his contract. But when you look at it, first year, 1,600 yards. Played 15 of 15 games. Or played in 15 games. Started the 15. 2017, he played 10 games. Only had 983 yards. Then he went back up to 1,400 yards in 15 games. Then 1,300 yards in 16 games. But then you could see he starts to come down. And, he goes down to 979 in 15 games. Then he goes back up to 1,000 in 17 games in 2021. But then down to have his worst year last year with 876 yards. But he did have 12 touchdowns. So then you look at Doug Martin, another first-round pick. He had injury issues. He's, his first year, 1,400 yards. His fourth year, 1,400 yards, but then went to 421, and then 400, and then 723. So that's a perfect example of getting that fifth year and then moving on from him because, it's just they start to break down. LaDainian Tomlinson's was a nut job. I mean, if you really look at this guy, absolutely just nuts. So, first year 1,200, second year 1,600, third year 1,600, fourth year 1,300, fifth year 1,400, sixth year 1,800. That was his best year of his career, was in 2006, which was his sixth year. So that's past his first contract. Then you look at Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush is another one. He never really had big, in New Orleans, he wasn't a big running back, because he shared time and he was more of a receiving back. So he only really topped out at like 581 in his second year. Then he moves on to Miami, where he was the feature back. And that was after his contract. And they got good stuff out of Reggie Bush in the 2 years that Miami had him. 1,000 yards and then 986. And then his first year in Detroit, 1,000 yards. But then after that, hurt, played 9 games, played 1 game, played 0 game, or started 0 games. So, again, another running back that, gets down and starts to break down. Adrian Peterson, so if you look at it, his fifth year, he had 970 yards after having 1,000+ yards his previous 4. Then has his best year, like LaDainian Tomlinson did, in year 6. But then after that, he starts to trickle down. He did have 3 more 1,000-yard years, 2 at Minnesota, and then 1 with Washington. But again, older guy in his 30s, he starts to break down with injuries. Chris Johnson, another one, crazy. You got the best out of him in his first 5 years. 1,200, 2,000, 1,300, 1,000, 1,200. And then his 6th year, he had 1,000 yards still. But then he moves on to the Jets in 14, 600 yards. Arizona, 800 yards. Then he had 95 yards and 114 yards. So, again, breaking down after that 5th and 6th year. 5th and 6th year is that hot spot for these running backs. So this is the reason why I'm saying maybe taking them in the first round. If you believe that this running back can be good and can be that good, take him in the first round. Get that 5th year out of him. Christian McCaffrey, 435, then he had 1,000, then he had 1,300, then 225, 442, and then last year with the 2 teams between San Francisco and Carolina, he had 1,100 yards. I think he'll start to get better, because that's his 6th year. Last year was his 6th year, so he had a good year, another one. But this is where you're like, all right, but he has a team around him. He's got a really good team around him, so it's something that he really doesn't need to rush the way that that some of these running backs would have to. So that's just my argument on taking a running back in the first round. And then I wanted to get into my top 10 running backs heading into this season. I got number 10, Tony Pollard. Number 9, Austin Eckler. Number 8, Dalvin Cook, the teamless Dalvin Cook. We'll see where he goes. 7, I have Kenneth Walker. I think Kenneth Walker is getting there, and he's becoming one of those feature backs. Number 6, I have Saquon Barkley. Number 5, I have Jonathan Taylor, even though he's having his issues with the Indianapolis. Derrick Henry is number 4 for me. Josh Jacobs, also another guy having his issues with contracts. He's number 3. Nick Chubb is my number 2. And then I have Christian McCaffrey at number 1, mainly because of the team that's around him. But let's get into it.
Running up the score NFL preview. AFC North.
We're going to start off
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Now, what is one thing that we learned last year with the Steelers? Yes, another winning season. Mike Tomlin has not had a losing record season since becoming the head coach for the Steelers. But my one thing, what have we learned? My one thing that I've learned from the Steelers is Kenny Pickett is the future. And it looks like a very nice future for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Kenny Pickett is only going to get better each and every year. George Pickens is a beast. I think they need to use Najee Harris a lot more. That's my one thing with them. It's just I need to see more of Najee Harris. Now, looking back,
off-season grade.
I'm going to give them an A. When you look at their draft, they needed O-line help for a long time, really. Trading up to get Broderick Jones was a smart, no-brainer deal. They needed it. It was much needed. They got their offensive lineman. Good move by them doing that. Also, taking Joey Porter Jr. at the top of the second round was a very good move that needed to happen. And not to mention, they drafted the son of a longtime Steeler, Joey Porter, as well. That can't hurt. Keanu Benton also should make an impact along the defensive line immediately, as much as Darnell Washington may have always been overrated as a fringe first-round prospect at tight end. He's a steal at the 93rd pick in the third round for the Steelers. So that right there, their draft outlook, B+. You got to give them a B+. I think they hit their needs. It was great.
Free agency recap.
I'm going to give them a B. They made low-key additions in free agency that should help the team significantly from last year. Isaac Samalu, he earned a PFF pass blocking grade of at least 77.4 over the last 3 seasons. So that's, something that was needed. Cornerback Patrick Peterson and Cole Holcomb should both be upgrades for their defense. And then adding Allen Robinson for basically nothing is one of those low-risk, high-reward things.
Will they make the playoffs?
Unfortunately for the Steelers, their division is good. The Browns are going to be better. The Ravens are going to be better. The Bengals are the Bengals. And then the AFC just as a whole. They're not going to win this division. So now you're looking at a wild card spot. And then when you look at the line of AFC teams, it's hard for me. I see the Steelers as a fringe team, but I don't see them making the playoffs, only because of that.
Contender or pretender?
Now, again, this is where I'm like, they're kind of on the fence. I'm leaning towards no to making the playoffs. When I do these contender and pretenders, I'm thinking more on the lines of, are they going to be a playoff team? It's kind of the same question, same answer kind of thing in terms of will they make the playoffs and if they're a contender or a pretender. My contender-pretender thing is not for Super Bowls, because if I did that, 95% of the league would be a pretender compared to a contender. So I'm basically saying for contender and pretender, can they make some noise in the playoffs? Now, contender or pretender for the Steelers. I'm putting them in a between. As I said, the AFC is tough if you don't win your division. And they are not going to win their division. Obviously, they have the Bengals in their division. They have the Ravens in their division if the Bengals don't win that division, which I don't see that happening. And then you got the Browns. Again, you're getting a full season of Deshaun Watson, a full training camp of Deshaun Watson. So I think every team in the division is unfortunately better than the Steelers. But this team, I think, is definitely on the upswing. You draft your future at Kenny Pickett last year. He had his ups and downs last year. I think he's only going to keep getting better because he's shown signs last year of being a very, very good quarterback. And I'm excited to see him, as he goes on.
2023 season outlook.
I'm expecting right around the same kind of season as last year. I think Kenny Pickett, again, only going to get better. This offense needs to start putting up numbers better than they did last year. That was their issue. They struggled on the offensive side of the ball. But that also means I think they need to get the ball to Najee Harris more often. And again, I don't think they're going to be that competitive in this division. I do see them being last. But again, on an upswing, Kenny Pickett's the future. It's it's only going to be up from here for the Steelers.
What are the odds?
Over under 8.5 wins. I'm going to put them at 8 wins going under. They're plus 470 to win the division. That's not going to happen. They're plus 2,500 to win the AFC. That is 10th best. And they're plus 146 to make the playoffs, which is 19th.
Cincinnati Bengals.
Joe Burrow, missing multiple weeks. Trey Hendrickson, extended, so that's nice. And as I said, Burrow will end up being the highest paid player very soon.
Off-season grade.
I'm going to give them an A. Cincinnati getting Orlando Brown at tackle was huge. It was unexpected, but it was an awesome move. 5 straight seasons, he was a PFF pass blocking grade of at least 74.4. And definitely helps solidify that offensive line. Hopefully they can stay healthy. That's another thing that they need to do. Cody Ford adds depth to the group. And then also going after Irv Smith for tight end. If he can stay healthy, it's, again, a low-risk, high-reward kind of move for the Cincinnati Bengals. AFC Championship loss obviously hurts. The Bengals needed to make some, they needed to make some hard decisions going into this offseason. And they allowed Jesse Bates, Von Bell, Samaje Perine, and Hayden Hurst all walk in free agency. But you add, replacing that, you add Nick Scott, you add Irv Smith, you add Orlando Brown. Then they drafted Jordan Battle. They got Chase Brown. So obviously Joe Mixon's future is that's the major question, really. But I give him an A.
NFL draft recap.
I'm going to give him a B. Their draft was definitely a good one. Miles Murphy bringing elite tools and flashes of play at the area of the draft where the skill set is typically gone. The cornerback DJ Turner. Then they got Jordan Battle, as I said, Charlie Jones, Chase Brown, all future-proof areas of the roster without needing to be pressed into full-time roles right away.
Free agency recap.
I'm going to give them an A-. As I said, with all the guys that they've lost, they kind of filled their holes pretty well in free agency. The offensive line obviously has been an issue for Cincinnati since Joe Burrow came into the league. But Orlando Brown was a huge step in the right direction. But you lose guys like Jesse Bates, you lose guys like Von Bell. That's tough for that secondary at the safety position. But I think what they've done so far has definitely helped. I think Cincinnati will be all right.
Will they make the playoffs?
Yes. I mean, that's a stupid question, barring Joe Burrow.
Contender or pretender?
They're a contender without a doubt. They'll be right there, and it's guaranteed. You're looking at it. You're guaranteed probably a divisional round or a championship round, basically. And I think that they're going to be there at the end. So
2023 season outlook.
Now that Burrow will miss some time, although we don't know how much time. They just said several weeks. As basically what I was saying before, we're probably going to see the last of Joe Burrow this preseason. So hopefully he'll be there back for week 1, but we'll see. The thing that worries me about the Bengals and Joe Burrow, this is another offseason where he is out. You had COVID, then you had a torn ACL, then you had the appendix, now you have the calf. It's something that's becoming a trend, but also the trend is the slow starts that they've been getting when Joe Burrow has gone down and hasn't been in training camp. So that is my only, my only worry with the Bengals is that slow start could end up putting them in a tough position because the AFC is so good and their division is going to be a lot better than last year. So that's my only thing. Do I think it only lasts maybe a game or two? That's probably what I think. But again, I expect them to be there at the end with the Bills, with the Chiefs, maybe with the Jets. We'll see.
What are the odds?
Over under 11.5 wins. I have them at 11 wins. Again, a lot of these, over-unders that I'm looking at, I'm most likely going to take them on the unders. Vegas always has them right there. I mean, it's always like right there. That's why I'm going under. They're plus 130 to win the division. Not bad. Plus odds. Take a team that's won the division the last 2-3 years. Plus 500 to win the AFC. That's third best. And minus 310 to make the playoffs. That's fourth best.
Cleveland Browns.
Browns will be better this year. You're getting a full Deshaun Watson training camp. You're getting a full Deshaun Watson season. And I think, just finally getting back into the swing of things for Deshaun Watson, I think is huge. Being with his teammates in training camp is huge. And I think they're going to be better. The verdict is still out to see if Deshaun Watson gets back to his Texans form. Because we're watching this guy before his legal issues. He's with the Texans, and you're like, this guy is one of the best quarterbacks, one of the best young quarterbacks in this league, and sky is the limit. And then everything happens, and you're like, and then you see him last year, and you're like, whoa, what happened to this guy? So the verdict is still out. Whether he gets back to that form, if he gets back to Texans form, the Browns might surprise people.
Off-season grade.
I'm going to give him an A. The Deshaun Watson trade and signing last year kind of handicapped the team's capabilities this year. They were able to find enough money to revamp the defense with Dalvin Tomlinson, Juan Thornhill, Ogbania Okoronkwo. I definitely said that wrong. But then they had the under-the-radar trade acquisition of Elijah Moore, which I think is going to be it's going to end up being a very big move to help out with Amari Cooper. And I could see it being a steal. They didn't really give up much. And I think, just having Nick Chubb, having Amari Cooper, a full season of Deshaun Watson, I mean, it's exciting for the Browns.
NFL draft recap.
I'm going to give them a B-. In the draft, the line continued to get reinforced with the nose tackle, Siaka Aka, and edge rusher Isaiah McGuire, halting the slide of Ohio State offensive lineman DeJuan Jones and Luke Whitepuller, gives the draft a huge potential payoff. That's the biggest thing. Cedric Tillman and Elijah Moore adding with Amari Cooper, huge. And I think that this offseason could definitely push the Browns up. As I was saying, they could be surprised.
Free agency recap.
I give them an A+. It's almost like you're getting Deshaun Watson again, basically, because you're going to get a full season out of him. So the biggest thing is just getting the talent around him. They traded for Elijah Moore, as I said, and then you make the deals on the defensive side with Dalvin Tomlinson and Okoronkwo. Then they were able to re-sign Anthony Walker and then sign Juan Thornhill to really kind of, strengthen that defense. And if Deshaun Watson can return to that 2021 form, this free agent, this offseason for the Browns could really propel them into the playoffs.
Will they make the playoffs?
They're a bubble team to me. As I said, this is another team that's, in this division. Obviously this division is good, but it's the AFC. So, my thing is I don't think that they're better than the Bengals or the Ravens. So that puts them automatically in third, although they could surprise, but that already puts them in third in their division, and that kind of knocks them down a notch in the AFC. And as I said, the AFC is very deep and it's tough. Also, not knowing what you're going to get from Deshaun Watson.
Contender or pretender?
Although I said, what I said about them being a bubble team, I put them as a betweener. They could make some noise, but they also are in the AFC, so it's going to be tough. So I have them in between as a pretender or contender.
2023 season outlook.
I expect to see a better Deshaun Watson and a team that is good enough to fight for a wild card spot in the AFC.
What are the odds?
Their over-under is 9.5. I like them at 9. They are plus 390 to win the division. They are plus 1,700 to win the AFC. That's 9th best. And they are plus 104 to make the playoffs. That's 15th best.
Baltimore Ravens.
J.K. Dobbins needs to stay healthy, really, for this team. And I think he can have a breakout season, to be totally honest with you. He's that kind of running back. But when you play 23 games in 3 seasons and it's a contract year, that's one big thing. Like, it's a contract year. You need to stay healthy if you want to get your money. And it's already bad enough that you're a running back. So as I, going back to that.
Off-season grade.
I give them a B. They get a bump, obviously, because they were able to keep Lamar Jackson. And that was huge. Then you add Odell. It was pricey, but, I think having those two, in the offseason, re-signing Lamar Jackson, then signing Odell, I think that was huge.
NFL draft recap.
A-. Zay Flowers was a huge fit. Andrew Voorhees along the offensive line is a steal in round 7. But otherwise, this, they kind of, the only reason why I'm giving them an A- is because of Zay Flowers. That's really it. And it's showing up in camp too. Zay Flowers is one of Lamar Jackson's favorite targets right now, as I'm hearing. But that's whatever.
Free agency recap.
Now I have them as a C. Again, as I said, really, Odell Beckham and Zay Flowers really the only things that they added. But when you look at who they lost, they haven't signed, anybody other than Nelson Aguilar. But they lost Ben Powers. They lost Calais Campbell. They lost Marcus Peters. So it was a rough free agency for the Ravens.
Will they make the playoffs?
Yes. Although they won't take the division from the Bengals, I think the Ravens should get a wild card spot, but I don't know if they're equipped to move on further than just a wild card spot.
Contender or pretender?
I have them as a contender, as in a playoff team. Super Bowl is definitely not in the cards for the Ravens.
2023 season outlook.
I expect a rejuvenated Lamar Jackson. I expected, obviously with his contract, all that hoopla out the window, I expect him to be rejuvenated. I think with weapons like Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham, and then you have you add Mark Andrews to that offense will be one of the better offenses in the league. And I think they need to get J.K. Dobbins in the swing of things, keep him healthy, get him into this offense, and they really could be very, very good. And I expect them to be a playoff team, but a first round out.
What are the odds?
Over under 10.5 wins. I have them at 10. Plus 250 to win the division. Plus 1,000 to win the AFC. That's fourth best. And minus 150 to make the playoffs. That's 10th best.
NFC North.
And we'll start off with
Green Bay Packers.
the Jordan Love era has commenced. Love, who sat behind Aaron Rodgers for 3 years, the same amount of time that Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre, will now take over in Green Bay.
Off-season grade.
B-. The Packers, they finally decided to move on. They decided to move on from Aaron Rodgers, and whether that it was a good move or not, that obviously is up for discussion, I guess you could say. And we won't see that until the season starts. They deserve credit with the whole thing with the Jets and the Packers. So that's, in the rear view. Aaron Rodgers in the rear view. Now it's J Love.
NFL draft recap.
B. They repeatedly attacked the same positions with multiple selections. The defensive line, Lucas Van Ness, Colby Wooden, Carl Brooks. Then they went for receiver Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Grant DuBose, and then tight end Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. They expect most of these guys to make an immediate impact.
Free agency recap.
They get an F. The lineup on the offensive side of the ball is lacking, and they didn't really do anything to bolster that up. You're hoping that two young guys in Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs are going to be great. They're expecting Luke Musgrave, another young guy, to be great. And then you're expecting Jordan Love to be great. And I decided, there a lot of people are kind of up and down when you're talking about Jordan Love. And I just wanted to bring up, basically his draft, like his prospect. What do you want to call it? I guess just basically when he was going to get drafted, what was his strengths, weaknesses, and whatnot. All that stuff. All his combine stuff. His prospect grade was a 6.36. And it was technically a 79, which is good. Obviously they drafted him first round, the 26th pick. He's 6'4", 224. His arm, 32 5/8. His hands, 10.5. His production score, they ranked him 6th in the combine of quarterbacks with a 68. His athleticism score was a 68, which is ranked 9th overall. And then his total score was ranked 5th among quarterbacks in that draft. Mind you, that's the 2020 draft. So that is Justin Herbert. That is, I believe that's Joe Burrow, isn't it? Yeah, that's Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. That's that year. So to be fifth among them, that's big. So his 40-yard dash 4.74, his 10-yard split 1.58. So all the good stuff. But let's move on to his weaknesses and his strengths, so we can see what to expect from Green Bay this year and Jordan Love. You know what drives me crazy? I just updated this computer, and I literally have nothing else going on this computer, and it's slower than my ass. Strengths: tall in the pocket, smooth and natural thrower, keeps the ball tucked and secure while scanning the field. Tight spirals come from a variety of arm slots. Offenses built upon intermediate and deep reads and throws. Confident passer attacking between the hashes. Makes athletic pocket exits when scrambling. Good open field vision and speed to move the sticks. Arm strength to dime it into windows. Drops deep balls into plenty of air. Drops deep balls in with plenty of air and touch. In 2018, trusted big receivers to make plays on 50-50s. Arm talent and swagger to attack field side. Cover 2 hole. Has access to expedited compact release when pressured. His weaknesses: consistency and production took massive step backwards in 2019. Looping windup, part of a slower operation time. Too much staring and telegraphing. 6 games with multiple interceptions, including 3 pick sixes. Below average decision making against zone looks. Allowed coverage to swarm due to lack of anticipation. Unusually spotty ball placement, forced targets to work for catches. Completed just 31% of his deep throws. Doesn't slide to safer launch points enough. Will void viable pocket at times. Needs to use his eyes to hold safeties longer. And issues bringing in off-target snaps, leading to fumbles. Now, some of that was kind of contradictory, but I'm not going to, that's on NFL.com, whatever. But yeah, that's what we're expecting. The unknown, basically. But again, working under Aaron Rodgers for the last 3 years, that's had to have helped. So I'm interested to see what we're going to see from Jordan Love this year.
Will they make the playoffs?
No. That's a quick no.
Contender or pretender?
Pretender. To be honest with you, maybe just, I mean, they might be in the running for Caleb Williams, basically. That's what I'm saying. So whether it's that or they get, the first or the second pick and they trade it because they do believe in Jordan Love, whatever it is, I think the future is what to look at for Green Bay.
2023 season outlook.
I'm expecting a lot of struggles from Green Bay, but it's expected. They are turning over a new leaf, and it's Jordan Love's team now. Unfortunately, he's lacking weapons on the offensive side. So until they really add weapons, it's going to be a struggle year for the Green Bay Packers.
What are the odds?
Over under 7.5 wins. I'm putting them at 6. Plus 340 to win the division. Plus 1,800 to win the NFC, which is 8th best, which is right in the middle, which is crazy. Plus 130, plus 138 to make the playoffs. That's 18th best.
Detroit Lions.
Jameson Williams suspended 6 games. So you had the injury. Obviously, they drafted him. He tore his ACL at the end of his college, career. So they knew what they were getting when they were going after Jameson Williams. You're looking for the future. Finally comes back towards the end of the season. starts to show signs of like, wow, this kid could be really good. Then gets suspended to start this season for 6 games due to gambling. So that's, lovely.
Off-season grade.
Give them an A-. They missed the playoffs last season, but the team is the favorite. The Lions are the favorite to win the NFC North. They have a young roster and it definitely interesting additions. The Lions had as I said, an exceptional offseason. They basically picked up Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Emmanuel Mosley, and Cameron Sutton. They're going to get the majority of the snaps in the secondary. Then they ended up picking up David Montgomery. Obviously, they got rid of DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. So they, a rushing attack that was really, really good. They end up losing both of them. They get David Montgomery, and then you end up bringing in also Graham Glasgow, to basically stabilize that interior on the offensive line.
NFL draft recap.
A B. It's hard to dislike the guys that they drafted. Jahmyr Gibbs. Then they also took Hendon Hooker, which, Jared Goff, I don't want to say he's getting older, but, I mean, he can only take you so far. Great season last year, but I think Hendon Hooker is a guy that, maybe you redshirt him this year. You just keep working with him, and he has that ability to really make the Lions offense dynamic. So I'm interested to see, if they really feel like Hendon Hooker is the future.
Free agency recap.
I'm going to give him an A-. As I said, Cameron Sutton, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Emmanuel Mosley. They lost Deshaun Elliott, so what they did in the secondary was huge. Adding David Montgomery with Jahmyr Gibbs is, it's again, running back. I don't want to say is not the most important position, because I think it is important. I'm one of those guys that likes a run game, but it's not as important, So David Montgomery just might be that guy to just bridge the gap, basically. So yeah, I gave him an A-.
Will they make the playoffs?
Yes.
Contender or pretender?
Contender. I think the Lions got better, and I think that they will win the North. And the NFC is basically pretty open. So this year is going to be fun in the NFC.
2023 season outlook.
I'm expecting the Lions to finally win the division and make some noise in the playoffs. I hope last year's success, although not making the playoffs, doesn't get to their head too much. I think the underdog mindset really carries the team, and I think the Lions are really feeding off of that last year, especially feeding off of Dan Campbell in that aspect.
What are the odds?
Over under 9.5 wins. I like them at 10. Plus 155 to win the division, plus 900 to win the NFC, which is 4th best, and minus 170 to make the playoffs, which is 9th best.
Minnesota Vikings. Off-season grade.
B+. It was way more of the same for the Vikings. They certainly are pushing to get younger and cheaper, but not necessarily better. They traded Zadarius Smith to get his contract off the books. They added Marcus Davenport to step into that role, but he really never exceeded 51 carries in a season. So 51 pressures in a season, I should say. And Zadarius Smith had 78 pressures last year. So that's a significant step down, but their point differential last year was disappointing, to say the least. The defense really needed a revamp, and they got a new coordinator in Brian Flores, and then they added Byron Murphy, Marcus Davenport, Dean Lowry, and they let go of Adam Thielen, Dalvin Tomlinson, and Eric Kendricks.
NFL Draft Recap.
They added Jordan Addison, which would be nice to be on the other side of Justin Jefferson and to fill the role of Adam Thielen. The opportunity is there definitely for Mekhi Blackman. Dwayne McBride, one of the best value picks of day 3, and definitely is going to be big because you obviously moving on from Dalvin Cook.
Free agency recap.
B-. The guys that I brought up before, Dalvin Tomlinson, Eric Kendricks, Patrick Peterson, Adam Thielen, although, big names, they had an okay offseason. Like, these guys were older, so what they brought back in, they got younger. It's obviously the verdict is still out if they got better, but they didn't make a huge improvement, and it just kind of seems like they're treading water, so I gave them a B-.
Will they make the playoffs?
I think yes.
Contender or pretender?
I say contender, but just as a playoff team. I don't think they really go that much further than making the playoffs, basically what they did last year.
What are the odds?
Their over-under is 8.5 wins. I think they get to 9. I think they lose the division by 1 game. Plus 260 to win the division. Plus 1,400 to win the NFC, which is 6th best. And plus 104 to make the playoffs, which is 16th best. That's last in the NFC, unless that might be 16th overall, so that's middle of the pack.
Chicago Bears.
The Bears are going to surprise people this year. I said it. Justin Fields will throw the ball so much better this year and will rush for 1,000 yards as well. I'm going to be crazy here, and I actually see him doing exactly what he said and throwing for 4,000 yards. That's how big of a move I think that getting DJ Moore was for Justin Fields. Yes, I said it.
Off-season grade.
Is an A-. Obviously the evaluation that they, after the season was, all right, well, we have the number 1 pick. And yes, if you got the number 1 pick, you're taking a quarterback. But we have Justin Fields. So do we believe in Justin Fields? Obviously they did. They traded it away. They got DJ Moore in that whole thing. No team entered the offseason with more resources than the Bears. They did a nice job rebuilding the roster top to bottom. They had some free agency acquisitions, Tremaine Edmonds, DeMarcus Walker, TJ Edwards, Nate Davis. They added DJ Moore in the trade, obviously. Chicago hit on many of last year's draft picks that they hope to repeat the same basically in this draft. Obviously, I'm trying to think of the words to say. Darnell Wright, Gervin Dexter, Tyreek Stevenson. The roster isn't really right there yet, but they did improve from last year.
NFL Draft Recap.
B+. In this draft, Darnell Wright has a highlight reel of crushing blocks, but one of the worst run blocking profiles of any top pick in recent memory, which is scary. The defensive lineman Gervin Dexter and Zach Pickens each have physical tools, basically, that didn't display an impact in college, but they mitigated the risk well with contingency plans at several spots. So overall, this was a big jump for the roster that basically was torn down a year ago.
Free agency recap.
I'm going to give them an A. Again, just the list of names that I brought up before. Just overall, what they did, bringing in DJ Moore. Then, obviously that was in a trade, but, it's whatever. But Nate Davis, TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds, these are big moves for this Chicago team. Big moves to make a stride. The Chicago Bears still have a long way to go to upgrading basically around Justin Fields, but this was definitely a big, good start for Chicago.
Will they make the playoffs?
No.
Contender or pretender?
I have them a pretender, but not for long. Not for long.
2023 season outlook.
I'm expecting the Bears to make huge strides. Unfortunately, I believe they'll miss the playoffs, but I see signs of like the Jaguars in them from last year. Like I think that they'll pull out some surprising wins, and Justin Fields will definitely show out this year, but not just on his feet. I think he'll show with his arm, and you may think I'm crazy, but I think he will show out with his arm.
What are the odds?
Bears over under 7.5. I like them at 7. Plus 400 to win the division. Plus 2,500 to win the NFC. That's 10th best, and plus 172 to make the playoffs. That's 22nd best.
Around the hobby.
First off, the National just ended yesterday. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go. I'm very upset about it. I had a crazy amount of FOMO being home, watching all these videos and all these pictures and all this stuff from the National, because last year was amazing. And honestly, at this point, I don't ever want to miss another National. Like, that's how much fun I had last year, and how much just like the FOMO that I had was insane. Like, I wish I was in Chicago last year. This last weekend. Like, it was unbelievable. So this was interesting. I wanted to talk about this real quick because I saw this on Eric Whiteback's Twitter. Topps was sending out their redemptions basically from Bowman U, and they sent a rookie autograph to 5 of Victor Wembanyama, which is worth around $30,000. And they sent it to the wrong person. I mean, it like, I don't know how you do that. This guy posted that he was supposed to get a Scoot Henderson auto to 5, but it was replaced with a Wembanyama to 5 on accident. Now, yes, Scoot Henderson's card is huge. I actually have a redemption for it. I'm waiting for that to come back. It's nice. Yeah, absolutely. But it's not Wembanyama. It's like not even, 10% of what it is. So I'm interested to see like what happens with the guy that actually had the redemption of that card. So that's crazy that happened. I don't know how that could happen. To me, I think this is the time to start selling. I think this is the perfect time. The National is over, because leading up to the National, that's when people kind of, hold their money close to their chest. They don't, spend that much. And it's just something that, it just slows down. Everybody wants to keep their money for the National, and even their cards till the National, because you could sell differently, in person. So I think this is the time to sell. This is the time, especially football, you want to start selling. This is the time. This year's National is thought to break the attendance record. This was the 43rd annual National, and it's always, they don't let you know what the numbers are, basically, but the record was set in 1991 in Anaheim. Like, that's known to be like the record setter. That was the one. And they are expecting that this National exceeded 100,000 people. And also in terms of the Nationals to come, they usually have this, meeting, and they go over the next 3, whatever. Atlantic City convention officials have offered to cover $1,000 of each dealer's booth cost as part of its pitch to land the 2026 National Sports Collectors Convention. Now, Atlantic City, although was very close to me, it was only a 3-hour ride from me, being in New York, going to New Jersey. So I loved it in terms of that. It was an easy trip for me. Atlantic City's not the nicest town, and people were very, very vocal about that. So I think Atlantic City knows that they were a very, very big underdog to get the 2026. So now they had to come out with these deals. So we'll see what ends up happening with that.
New releases.
August 2nd, we have the 2023 Panini Score Football, which is going to be $200. The box break, you're getting 4 autos, 90 rookies, 10 parallels, 36 inserts, 1 lenticular insert per case, and 1 base/rookie die cuts per case. So now this is a box that has a lot of cards. You're getting 40 cards in this. You're getting 40 cards per pack, and you're getting 10 packs in this box. So you're getting 400 cards. So it's a big, big product, known to be a lesser kind, but it's definitely a fun product to just break to yourself. It's $200. Then we have 2023, also the same day, 2023 Panini Select H2 UFC, which is going to be $65, and there's only 6 base prisms, that you're expected out of the box break. It's an okay product. I mean, if you want something cool to rip, if you like the UFC, the H2 box is definitely, I mean, in that aspect, I probably would just go after the regular Select box. I think it was only 300 or something like that. They have the exclusive Disco Prism parallels, and then they also have the artistic selection inserts. 6 cards per pack, 4 packs per box, 20 boxes per case. And that will do it for Running Up the Score. Our next show will be the AFC West and the NFC West, and then we got the AFC East and the NFC East coming up soon. I'll have a guest for that show, but that will do it. I'm Jerry. Be breezy.
Be breezy.
And it is all over! You've been listening to Running Up the Score. We run up the score on sports radio.